Folks, welcome aboard. It is Cats on Guard. This is the podcast that's going to take you into places that you didn't know pilots and aircrew went. I am your captain, MC Howe. I will be taking you through this crazy exploration of all things that happen in the flight deck, in hotels, layovers, and elsewhere. Joining me, as always, is Rich Million.
Co-captain Rich Million.
Oh, sorry, I didn't want to insult you. Co-captain, my co-captain, Rich Million.
Oof.
We're going to be talking about all the kinds of questions that you might have. And if you do have questions, send them our way to catsonguard@gmail.com. Let's begin. So my day started at like 2 o'clock in the morning today. I was supposed to get up at 3:45 and I heard a noise. I don't know if it was I think it was my cat running around chasing something, but my mind decided someone had broken into the house and was rooting around looking for stuff. And I was in that moment trying to decide, if they come into my room, do I get up and tackle them and fight to the death? Which it seems silly because it was like, I'm going to wait for them to get in my room while they're going all over my house and my family's in peril. I think it was just the cat, but it was one of those days that you don't get any sleep because you have to get up stupid early to do this dumb job, which isn't really dumb, but we do keep some pretty dumb hours, right?
If you fought off an attacker, you wouldn't have to go to work.
I did wonder about that. Like, is that a legit call out?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, next time, if I could only be so lucky.
It always enters my brain. Can I get out of work doing that?
Yeah. So I didn't get out of work. I came to work. I only did one leg though. It was a very easy day as days go in this job, which, people have asked, what's your typical day like? And there's really no typical day. So someone ever asked that, I just have to pick a day out of my random memory and describe it. And I actually did that once and it was quite an interesting day. But hey, we're Cats on Guard. I am MC Howe. I am your host today. Joining me as always is Rich Million. Welcome.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning or afternoon. Could be evening. Could be the middle of the night.
It's 5 o'clock somewhere.
We're going to talk today about the typical life of a pilot. What it's like. What do we do? What do we do? We don't just sit there and fly the plane, right? That's like the smallest amount of what we do, I think.
It really is.
I mean, and you've done this a lot. You've worked in a lot of different places. What run down your little history for a minute?
Sure. I flew cargo for the majority of my career, but I've done a little charter. I've done a little passenger flying. I've done a little flight instructing. So I've seen a little bit of all the angles.
That sounds very typical, actually. Speaking of a typical day, I have a similar background from flight instructing, cargo, charter, airlines. I was even a flight attendant for a bit, which is kind of where I got. I was. Yes, I was a stewardess, which I can say because I was. It's really kind of where I got the idea that being a pilot was a little better. And I could tell you, it is a lot better. It's a lot better. I did that for about almost 4 years. I would go up front and I would talk to the pilots and look at those guys sitting down for one. That was a bonus. They had that locking door that separated them from the cab. And I knew they made a lot more money than I did passing out pretzels and Pepsis. So I thought I'll give that a try. And I did. Like you, I have been all over this industry for quite a number of years.
I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
Circling back to your statement about the flying being the easiest part of the day.
Yeah.
Who had the busier pre-flight duties, the pilots or the flight attendants?
Oh, the flight attendants by far. No question. Think about it. What we do as pilots, when we get to the airplane, at the level that I fly and you fly or have flown, you're in a new career now. You've started a new job, which is still flying, but it's a little different. But what I do at the airline is kind of like the end result of a bunch of other people doing their job. And I'm like the last one to come in and plug in and press go. and I'm pressing go for all of the work that they put in to get us to go. I can do my pre-flight in 10 minutes or less, honest to God. Those flight attendants are back there. They are doing all kinds of safety checks. They have to know every piece of safety equipment throughout the cabin, and there are a great many of them. And that, by the way, is their primary role on the airplane. It isn't serving.
Are you sure?
I am 100%, because I've done it. I know that the general public thinks they're there to smile and to wait hand and foot. No. In fact, I would be happy if we got rid of the services and just put vending machines on the planes.
Mind blown.
Mind blown. I know. I could see that. Because really, all they need to do is open the door in an emergency and save your ass when you need to get out. That's what they're there for. The FAA doesn't care if you get Pepsi or sandwich or have Wi-Fi on the airplane. They are there. In fact, they have done test studies. Airplanes are required to be certified. They have to be able to conduct an evacuation. And do you know how long? Think about it.
90 seconds?
90 seconds. So fully loaded. What's the biggest plane out there? How many seats? 400?
A380.
A380 has, I don't know how many seats, 400. We're going to say 400. I don't know if that's the number, but you got to be able to get 400 people off of that airplane in 90 seconds. And is that including with blocked exits? Probably, maybe. Meaning one or more door doesn't open or a slide doesn't deploy. So yeah, those flight attendants, they work hard. And here's the worst part. We're not paid during any of that part. From the time the first passenger steps on that plane, there is free labor going on, and it's at the front and the back of the airplane. So wrap your head around that next time you want to criticize my landing. Well,
I thought a lot of the programming, briefings, and preparation work in the cockpit was a lot, but now it's pretty eye-opening, flight attendant side of things.
Oh, I didn't even go into all of it. But yeah, yes, we do some things up there too. And it is nice to get that message out, because a lot of the times we'll be sitting up there doing our little things, and we get into the flight deck and we got to do our own safety checks. There's equipment to look at. There is maintenance log to read through. There are flight plans to load. And we do that stuff, and we have to talk to each other. And usually you're meeting your partner up there for the first time, quite often, especially at a larger airplane, thousands, tens of thousands of crew members. And you don't see the same one very frequently. So you have to introduce yourself. You have to start a little kind of a rapport, I guess. And in the midst of all of that, someone inevitably will stick their head in, because they don't think we do anything up there, and just start yammering away. And it drives me nuts. I can't. Interruptions. Like.
So tell me, before this even starts, how many hours you're going to get paid to fly from Chicago to Orlando? You're going to take some people to Disney.
Okay.
How many hours before takeoff are you moving before you start getting paid to work?
Well, if I give myself, you're talking about like from the time I leave my house?
Wake up time. Okay.
Wake up
so,
time.
Yeah.
Today.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your house to the airport.
I woke up today.
On the ground in Orlando.
Well, I woke up today to the faux burglar in the house about an hour and a half before I was intending to get up. And I never really.
Did the burglar have paws?
The burglar had a set of paws. Yeah. It was a cat burglar. That's what it was. I woke up. I got up. I got up at 3:16 today. My wife tapped me. She said, don't you need to get up? I'm like, yeah, in 14 more minutes, but okay. I got up. Now, in the interest of maximizing sleep, I got everything ready last night. All I had to do was roll out of bed, get dressed, and head out the door.
I do the same thing. I have everything packed sequentially at the door, keys on top of a coffee mug. So everything there's no failure process to get out the door.
You keep
relaxed.
Yeah. Now, about this keys on them, you keep your keys on top of a coffee mug. That's your key spot?
We have a key rack. Both sets of keys go on both hooks, but I'm an iced coffee guy. So the night before my flight, I can actually get my iced coffee in a Yeti mug, ice down, close it, and it's ready to walk out the door 5, 6, 8 hours later. So
oh, wow.
I make my iced coffee before I go to sleep, so I don't make all the noise stirring and clanking ice cubes in the morning and waking the family up.
The keys are on top of that coffee mug.
The ready to go out the door iced coffee, yes.
Gotcha. That must, yeah. and they stay cold.
Anybody who makes iced coffee knows you don't try to do that at 6 a.m. with family asleep.
I'm not a coffee drinker, not old enough. But by the time I get myself to the airport, I have about a 30-minute drive, and then we take the employee shuttle, which is not right next to the gate, unfortunately. And I've worked at a lot of different airlines, and I've been based in a lot of different airports, and very few of them will afford you any less than a minimum 30 minutes to get from your car to the terminal. Those employee shuttles stop to pick up all the other employees, and they're big lots. Airports are busy places with a lot of people working, so it's another 30 minutes. So that's an hour from the time I leave my house to the time I get there. And that's only because I live where I live. Some people live far, far away. I routinely fly with people who live several hours from the airport, and that's not uncommon at all. And I believe you might be one of those people.
I was, and I now live 15 minutes from work. But one of my last flights, I flew with the captain when I was working with you. He drove 4.5 hours each way.
I know it, and that's because they're within 4 hours to drive.
It's still the same time as flying, going to the airport at by the time you get to the parking lot, do the shuttle you just talked about, get to the gate. Hopefully, there's a seat for you on the plane.
Yep.
You might as well just get in your car and listen to your music.
It's 100% true. Yeah, and you're always going to get a seat too in the car. I've done that myself, and that's a big pain in the ass of this job is commuting. A lot of people do it, and what that means is
how many's a lot? Half?
Oh, more than half. I think 60, 75%.
Okay.
And so what that means is airlines have bases in airports. And there are only so many airports in any geographical area, right? And usually there's one per any big city. And the airlines don't put their crews in each one of these cities. So you might have a base in Atlanta or Seattle or Chicago, but you might live in Montana. And you're not going to move to one of those cities because you don't really have to with this job because we're given free flying benefits. And so a lot of crew members, like I said, I think it's 60, 70%. They will fly to work from wherever they live before they come to work. And it's both pilots and flight attendants that do this. In fact, I've even met maintenance people that do it and others. I can't think of who the others would be, but yeah.
So let's say you live a half an hour from work. The average employee that doesn't fly lives within a half an hour of their job.
That's me.
Perfect. But you have a lot of extra time to kill between when you start getting paid and when you get to the airport. So you leave your house half an hour to the airport. Then there's still 3 hours more things to do?
Well, I don't know about 3 hours.
2 hours?
Well, I get to the airport an hour after I leave. From the time I park the car, get on the shuttle, it's an hour from the time I've left my house. But I haven't started work yet, right?
And there's security.
Then there is security. And that can be either very quick or not so much, depending, and it's all random. Now, we are afforded a super secret entrance through security that the flash of our ID badge oftentimes lets us go through.
I like that you said oftentimes.
Yeah. Well, there are random selections that lately have been seeming less and less random.
Oh, let me pause there for the public that's wondering why we get special privileges at airport security. As aircrew, we are background checked every 24 hours through numerous watch lists and criminal agencies.
Wait, is that true?
Oh, absolutely.
Every 24 hours?
They run your name. If you get a federal offense or a DUI, 4 p.m., they'll know by 1 a.m.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So one of my previous jobs, we were trained TSA screeners as well as pilots.
Oh, really?
So we would screen the sports teams before we flew them. So we would set up a checkpoint in the ramp if it was nice weather, or in the FBO, or in an empty hangar somewhere, and we would create our own sterile security area. We were trained for a whopping 2 business days on how to be TSA trainers once a year.
That seems about right.
We did the wanding, the pat-down procedures, the exemptions, the rules. We were trained TSA screeners, and we would screen.
Did you get to pat each other down in training?
We do in
Touch
training,
each
and
other's special
that
areas?
was always an interesting time when we had to pick someone in the room to pair up with because if you didn't know them, you really didn't want to touch them, and if you did know them, you probably made an inappropriate joke or two while you were doing the security.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that sounds fun.
um, yeah, but yeah, you're the security process at the sports charter job that I was doing a little back was much more intense in the security angle of things. And yeah, there was 24-hour, 121 carriers, and other high security risk operations of access to the flight deck are run every 24 hours through the criminal
Wow.
system.
Well, hopefully that doesn't happen. You swipe your badge, you get a green light, and off you go to the gate, right? And then you get to the gate. Now, you're required to get to the gate anywhere from an hour to 45 minutes prior to departure time, which is pretty standard around the business. That's when the free work begins. So we've got all the security checks to do, make sure nobody's stowed anything that shouldn't be on the aircraft, either in the flight deck, tampered with the stuff that is there, making sure that the aircraft is airworthy, meaning that parts are not going to fall off while we're flying across the sky.
Somehow they still do.
They do, don't they? I had one the other day. We had a fuel panel door that has two latches that keep it. They're very flimsy. If you ever look at these things, I don't know what keeps these airplanes together, but one of the two latches wouldn't latch properly. And the maintenance man, or the fuel man, reported it and called out the maintenance man to look at it. He kind of jury-rigged it. I got it. It's not going anywhere. I didn't fix the latch, but it's not going anywhere. So, well, he said, if it's okay with you, we'll just go. I said, no, that's not okay with me. Because number one, you're putting that liability on me. Number two, when we get to the next station, the next fueling guy is going to open a panel. We're going to have the same issue. So what do? They took the fueling panel door off and stuck it in. They took it completely off, and they stick it in the closet behind my seat in the flight deck.
And do they use that shiny tape that everyone loves to take pictures of on the internet?
Well, I don't think they did.
Just the fuel penalty.
Because, no, we didn't even have a penalty. It was
no
just
direct penalty. Okay.
Nothing. No, surprising. It's a small enough panel. I guess maybe it doesn't matter. But yeah, things do fall off. It's true. Wheels, tires, other things.
I have a fall off the airplane story for you.
Oh, I want to hear it.
I had a long hydraulic failure. This was in a Falcon 20, and we circled around running procedures, and we landed with the emergency declared. We used the whole runway and a limited brake and such. And when we come to the FBO at the end of the flight, the FBO is for those of you at home that don't know, sort of like a terminal, but for private airplanes and cargo jets, some private cargo planes. So it's kind of like a terminal, but just on the other side of the airport. Anyway, we pull up to the ramp, and Marshall's the guy with the wands, and he lines us in, and he has a surprised look on his face. And I open the door after I shut the engines down. He goes, "You're missing one of your landing gear doors." I panicked because I really did not want to know that at 3 a.m, I dropped a piece of metal through somebody's roof, and I was waiting to hear, who may have gotten hurt. Is it go through somebody's car, wood somewhere? Who knows? Well, thankfully, the Marshal didn't know that we only have one nose gear door on that Falcon.
Oh, good.
From right to left, one big panel swings out across the side. Most airplanes have two small doors that open.
Yeah.
From the middle outward. But he saw only one and told me that I was missing one. So
that's a danger of the people that work on the ground quite often. They don't know a lot about the airplanes that they're working on or with.
But they're trying to help.
They are trying to help, and I appreciate that. I used to fly an Embraer 145, which was a regional jet, seats about 50 people, and on a cold start in the mornings. So these airplanes, they taxi around, they need their engines to push them on the ground. We don't have, we don't have a gas pedal on the floor with our foot. We're really using the same motor that we fly with, but we drive around on the ground, usually with one engine to start the day because it uses less gas and we're not going very fast. Well, cold start on that engine, you taxi around on one and it's time to start the other one, but it's cold. And quite often on a cold morning, there's a lot of fuel vapor that has accumulated overnight, and you get a big fireball that blows out the back of that engine. It's quite a sight, but it's also scary as hell. And these ground guys see, "You guys are on fire." You're on fire trucks. And then the next thing you know, we're surrounded by fire trucks. And we're like, no, that's, so
How do you disregard? I mean, in the safety culture world that we live
you
in,
can't disregard it. You cannot. You have to pretend it's a fire. You know it's not, but you pretend it is, and you go through that whole process.
sounds excruciating.
Yeah. Well, hopefully all that stuff happens after you're on the clock because, like I said, all that free labor is, well, like I said, for us, for the pilots, it isn't very much. But those flight attendants, they have to do it. Every passenger that comes on board, they're looking at them. They're greeting them if they're friendly. And if they're not friendly, there's a lot of drama that goes along with it too. Some of these flight attendants, I'll get on the airplane. They're usually there first, quite often. In fact, they're required to be there before we are because they have so much more to do. And they'll do their checks and they'll find something wrong. And I step on board. I don't even get a hello. I just get a list of everything that's wrong. And it's one of these things that drives me crazy. And I'd say, I stop. Nope, we're not starting like this. You're going to say hello. We're going to go back and we're going to say hello. My name is, and how was your day? And then we can get into the nitty gritties. But yeah, they work hard and they work for free. And it doesn't get easier when the pay goes on either. Now, you and I get paid. I don't know how you get paid at your new job. You probably get a salary, right?
My new job, I'm paid for the year, whether I work a lot or a little or not at all.
When I show up to work, I've had a dispatcher that has checked all the weather, checked all the routes, filed the flight plan, determined the best route for us to get where we're going. He's ordered the fuel. All the loading and baggage handling is done by somebody else. Like I said, all I really have to do is press go.
Somebody hands you a slip, says how many bags got put onto the airplane.
Yeah. You, however, I think in your new job, do a little bit more.
I do a little more, but it's less. It's less, but more.
Yeah.
How do I explain this? With
well,
less
now,
people.
So let's explain. You're not in an airline any longer.
No,
right?
I'm in a private jet.
Private jet, or is it private or corporate? You work for a company? Yeah.
It's a company's jet. Yeah. It's a company's jet, and it moves the high-level executives from meeting to meeting. We move a few people around at a time. I think the max we can put on our airplane is 14 passengers at most, and that would be uncomfortable for those 14 people. Okay. However, we get to the airport about an hour and a half prior to departure. I feel a little spoiled because we have a maintenance department that does a wonderful job of getting the airplane fueled and de-iced and prepped and stocked, and there's food and drinks on board, and the airplane is out front and center every time, gear pins pulled, tow bars detached. I gotta say, we're pretty spoiled. We walk in and we do our pre-flight checks. We test all the systems. Fuel's already on there. Our flight dispatching is done by the pilots. We use a company called ForeFlight, and that's a very popular flight planning software.
We have used it.
From the Cessnas that you'll do your first flight lesson in, all the way up to jet pilots flying globally around the earth. ForeFlight and Jeppesen are the two big names in flight planning software. So we have flight planning there. We have some weight and balance data. We have some fuel planning. Based on where you're going, fuel may be more or less expensive. Sometimes we'll tanker the fuel because fuel is cheap where we are.
Same.
And other times it may be worth it to buy fuel, even if it's more expensive, because we waive some of the landing fees and other things.
Do you have to pay for that? Do you have to give them a credit card for the fuel in your new role?
We have accounts with all of the big name destinations where we're landing, so we don't have to.
Do you, when you go out to the self-serve fuel pump and do the pay at the pump, you just have the corporate card then?
If I ever had to fuel this at a pay at the pump, there's bigger problems happening. Yeah. However, it's pretty well set up. The company is extremely safety focused and safety driven, and so there's a process, almost painstakingly safe, to do things.
But safe's good. I like safe.
Safe is always good. It does sometimes get in the way of efficiency, but you have to weigh that against the risk. So when you're flying airplanes around the sky, safer is better than risky.
Do you ever think about that? About what we actually do and how insane it is that we're allowed? Like the governments around the world said, yeah, that's cool, do it. Doesn't seem wrong, doesn't it?
You know, if you got on a bus with 50 people, you wouldn't bat an eye. You put wings on it, and now years of training, and
Yeah, because the bus breaks down, it just stops on the road, right?
that's true. We
And
can't just pull over.
we can't just pull over. No. You know, the first time I was ever in a plane, I took they call it a discovery flight, where you decide you want to maybe learn how to fly, and you go out of flight school, and they take you up and they fly around and they let you work the controls and fly the plane, see if you like it. And I was having my first lesson with my first flight instructor, and he said, we're just cruising around. He said, what would you do if the engine quit working right now? I just looked at him. I said, I'd hope you would take over at this point. And he pulled the mixture, which is where the fuel goes into the engine, and he cut the fuel supply, and the engine stopped running. And it wasn't
On
as
your
easy.
discovery flight.
This might have been my first actual flying lesson, but
Okay.
yeah. It was very early, very early. But it wasn't as easy as just pulling a bus over, but we basically just pulled over. Basically, the energy that was holding the airplane in the sky kind of ran out, and as it did, we glided softly to the ground. Well, fortunately, he knew where the grass strip was underneath us before he did this little trick, but it worked. And I do sometimes think about that, and I think 100, 200 people in a metal tube, every conceivable thing that could go wrong. But for the most part, it works. Think about how safe it actually is. To quote Superman, statistically flying is. I just screwed that up. Edit that out. To quote Superman, statistics, I can't say it. Never mind.
Go back. Take 3.
Statistically speaking, flying is the safest way to travel.
It is. You have a better chance of dying on the way to the airport than you do on the plane.
Yeah, especially on that employee bus.
I think that hotel shuttles are more dangerous than employee buses.
Yes, they are. In fact, I'm routinely amazed when I get in the shuttle. I look around, I buckle up for safety, and a lot of people are just not even interested.
I would rather be ejected and die than survive whatever that driver's going to put me into.
Oh, well, that's one way to look at it.
I'm worth more dead than alive.
Are you? Good.
Thanks, insurance policies, man.
I guess I am too, now if you think about it that way. So let me
ask
you this.
Unbuckle, sit back and relax. Take that seatbelt off.
Yeah. So today I did one leg, and that was it. I was done by 8 a.m. Not typical, however, ideal. I think that's the way it should be every time. You just move the start time a little bit later in the day. Your new job, what do you typically do? Because we're usually anywhere from 1 to 3. 4 is a really bad. 3 is pushing my limits. 4.
We are typically one leg, A to B. This aircraft is capable of going anywhere on the earth on a full tank of gas.
It's insane. And it's not that big a plane, is it? Where does all this gas fit?
It's a 100,000-pound airplane.
Yeah. Okay.
104,000 pounds. So for you pilots out there that are putting the pieces together, you might figure out what type of airplane it is. But I did do some simulated flight planning. We can go from Detroit to Italy and back on one tank of gas and still have some left over.
That's great. There and back.
And back. And still have the minimum 1 hour reserves. So
it's incredible. Now, how do you get you go up over the North Pole, or those?
It's all wind dependent, altitude dependent. So the one leg is ideal. We like to do one leg. However, if you are flying more than 8 to 10 hours, we have a crew bunk area with a TV and a bed, and you can hang out and comfort, take your naps. So we'll take shifts if we have to do long flights.
So even on your little airplane, your 100,000 plus little airplane that can uncomfortably seat 14 people, you have room for a crew bunk.
Yeah, it's comfortable. It's comfortable for 8 because the aft sofa is a bed, so you can sit 3 sideways all the way in the back, or you can make it into a queen bed. So if you do load up all the people, they end up sitting sideways in couches, and it's not terribly comfortable on an airplane to sit sideways.
You have a restroom, a lavatory on that airplane?
We do. We have a divider between the passenger area and the crew area, and the crew actually has almost the forward third of the aircraft. There's a galley with an espresso machine and an oven and a microwave, and then there's a crew bunk, a crew lavatory, and then there's a closet and a jump seat, and then the cockpit.
So All right. In that gap, you have a flight attendant, or is that the
We
non-flying
do.
pilot's job? You do.
No, we have well, we don't always have to. We're not required to. The pilots are trained to evacuate the aircraft and brief the crew. In fact, we have an automated machine to brief the crew, or brief the passengers. I'm sorry. The flight attendant is mostly there to help provide comfort and assist in evacuation, but they're not required to instruct that.
Sounds very luxurious.
It
I'm
feels that way.
I'm a
However,
little,
the Airbus cockpit was more comfortable.
yeah, it is comfortable. I had a guy the other day riding the jump seat, and he was remarked how roomy it was coming from his 737, I believe, which, in my opinion, the worst. There's two flight decks that vie for the worst, most uncomfortable. 737 is horrible, and the other is the CRJ Canada Regional Jet. They're both just god awful small, cramped. So lucky.
The Learjet my first jet that I'd flown was Lear 25, and that was probably the official most uncomfortable seat because the tube is so tiny that your neck is kind of just cocked over a little
Oh
bit because you can't actually sit straight up without
no,
your head hitting the ceiling. So
and you're a tiny guy.
I am at 5'6", 5'7", depending on what convenience store I walk into. uh, I do not consider myself tall, and it is still uncomfortable in a Learjet. I would say if you flew a Learjet, the new airplanes or the CRJs and the 737s will seem comfortable. But if your standard is commercial aviation, a 737 cockpit's pretty terrible.
Yeah, I have a friend who works at one of those what do they call those flight share kind of a thing where all the super rich people buy a share of the jet.
Yeah.
He got what's the tiny little jet? The tiny little Barbie jet.
Phenom.
That no, I don't know if it was that one. Maybe it was. It was one of those Phenom or Eclipse or there's a Citation Mustang, I think. They're all
Yep.
pretty tiny. He'd flown for this company for a long time. He finally upgraded to captain, and he was going to be flying that little baby jet. Had to do a fit test before he could actually commence his training. Because if you don't fit, you can't fly.
Boy, requirements of the job, huh? Yeah, so one leg each way per day, hopefully. I've done some out and backs where you just drop off and come home. Next week I have a flight where we spend the day and fly back that evening. So we're just gonna get a car, go out, and have some lunch.
Well, I was going to ask, how do we handle that? Once we get to our destination, that's it. We're not home. I guess we're going to a hotel somewhere, huh?
So I think when we were working together, I believe our rules for if it was more than 4 hours on the ground, we were able to get a hotel, maybe 5 hours.
Yes. That very rarely happens. Thank God, because that's just because you're taking all that travel time that we talked about at the beginning of the day. Now it occurs at the end of the day. And if you're trying to squeeze that end of the day travel into the middle of the day and you're doing it twice on both ends, 4 hours to go to and from a hotel and try to unwind, that's the dumbest thing
I
ever.
never understood. Just get me a lounge ticket at an airport terminal. By the time you go outside of security, find the line, wait for the shuttle. The shuttle takes you to the hotel. You stand in line to check in. You get to your room. You unwind. And now you have to be at the airport in 2.5 hours.
Right. It's not. There's nothing relaxing about it. No. There's a lot about this industry that doesn't make sense. A lot of dumb decisions that have been done time and time again, and we do them just because. This is the way it's always been done.
I bet you if they up the hours to 6 hours, you'd have complaints.
Of course. Well,
6 hours. No. I need a hotel. 4 hours.
You wouldn't have pilots if you didn't have complaints.
32 days off a month or else.
Yeah. So, yeah. But let's assume that you don't have that 4 hours. You're done for the day. You're somewhere. You're in a hotel somewhere.
First thing off the plane, I believe you asked me, get on the phone with the shuttle and get them on their way here. I don't even think we got up the jet bridge and you were poking me to get in the phone.
That's right. And
it was worth it.
Yeah. And if I remember, the first time you and I flew together, here's another thing. You get to know the guy on day one, right?
Yeah, you get the restricted version day one.
But what I remember was the day that you and I met, you were coming back. You had been on a leave for a bit. I didn't know you, didn't know anything about you. I was getting a line check that day, which for an airline captain is just basically doing a regular flight, but you got a pilot sitting over your shoulder, an instructor pilot, they call the check airman, who just watches and makes sure you do it right. And I was late to work that day, if I recall. I was running late. I don't remember why. I get there. You're already there. He's there. And I walk in and I was grumpy. I don't remember why I was grumpy. Probably had a typical day. And I grumped my way in there. And the only thing I do remember is you had taken the paperwork for our flight plan and you put it in exactly the place that I like it, in exactly the way that I want it. And most people get that wrong. And I do remember you did that, and I complimented you, and that was how we started. Remember
I believe the instructor, I do. What I do remember is that the instructor was incognito. The instructor was wearing a jacket that did not identify that person as a pilot or an instructor.
And you probably didn't know, because it wouldn't show up on your schedule that I'm getting a line check, right?
It did not, and you were not happy about it. And I was talking about how am I supposed to know that this person is permitted to the flight deck in the first place, let alone observing and instructing.
And it's your first day back.
Yep. And I hope I don't screw this guy's checkup.
Oh, that was fun. That was a great trip.
And I think the big connection on day one for me was when I looked at you and said I could really use a steak and asparagus, grilled asparagus. And you went, what I wanted for dinner, something along those. There was a food connection there.
And we had a lot of food on that trip.
Oh, we did.
We had a lot of food on that trip.
And hey, you passed your observation.
Yes, I did.
Went fine.
I did. Yep.
I don't think there was any poor feedback from that one either.
No, so that's good. And it all worked out. And here we are, still friends.
Absolutely.
And that's a rare thing. I don't make friends with people I work with. To quote Dwight Schrute from The Office, I did not become a pilot to make friends. And by the way, I haven't. So that was fun. And I'm in a hotel. You're in a hotel right now. Our time is ours. People ask all the time if you're allowed to do anything. What can you do when you can do whatever I want? I'm free. I don't have to do reports. I don't have to have a meeting. I don't have to check in with my boss. Sometimes we check in at the beginning in fact, when I was a stewardess, we had a check-in policy that required us to call a phone number between 2 and 8 hours prior to departure to tell them that we are, in fact, coming to work that day. Then when we got there, we had to go into the little crew office and sign something that said we were actually here for work. And that's another major difference between the flight attendant job and the pilot job, is the way that we as pilots are treated as adults, and the flight attendants are simply not, which is a shame because they're doing a far harder job than we do. And they deserve a lot better treatment and more money.
Brings up a topic. I think we should cover this on a future episode. But irresponsible things that you've witnessed your coworkers do with all this responsibility.
I've already got that sketched out. Oh yeah, I got names. I got it all. It's coming.
Credit card scams, fuel points, rewards points. Backdoor purchases, expense reports. I mean, things that adults shouldn't be doing.
Right. Here we are. So that's for another day. I think today has been fantastic. I can't wait to do this again. What do you think?
I think I will see you in the morning for another episode.
All right. Take it easy. Thanks for joining. We'll come back for another Cats on Guard.
Captain Richard, sign out.
I'm MC Howe. We'll see you next time.